The Parliament of Ghana has approved an amendment for the Communications Service Tax Bill that was passed in 2008. Also in the news, the Ghana Integrity Initiative has released the 2013 report on the Transparency International Global Corruption Barometer. What is in the report? And what does the public make of the two events? Focus on Ghana discusses these next. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Focus on Ghana. Tonight, two issues engage our attention. The Communication Service Tax Bill, popularly known as the Talk Time Tax, is amended. Government under the Certificate of Urgency sent amendments of it to Parliament for approval. There is the proposition of 6 cents interconnectivity charge on the service provider. This generated a lot of debate amongst members of each side of the House. The bill will be looked at on the program tonight. Secondly, the Perception of Corruption Survey for 2013, so to speak, and its subsequent results. In the top ranking are the Ghana Police Service, the political parties, and the Judicial Service. Some have expressed little surprise at the ranking and the general results, but the institutions involved think otherwise and are being on the defensive. The police particularly has not taken it kindly at all. We shall be looking at that as well. On the show with me tonight are, to my immediate left, Frank Anderson, a media practitioner, and to my right, John Ofeansa, who is also a media practitioner, but the editor of the News Africa magazine. Then Peter Entry-Bosiaku to my far left. He is a social commentator. Viewers are invited to join the discussion on phone 0207-501-7701 or via email focusonghana@voxafrica.com, or you can visit our Facebook page, Focus on Ghana, and leave your comment there. Yanyako, in a report, has summed up the amendments that were taken to Parliament. Let's see what she says.
This week, Parliament passed the Communication Service Tax Amendment Bill, a bill that has generated much controversy in the past. The new amendment bill, which has yet to be ratified by President Mahama, is a collaboration between the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Communication to establish a monetary mechanism to verify the exact revenue communications companies accrue in order to tax them accordingly. The bill states that two ministers shall be given access to the network nodes of service providers at a point where the network providers' billing systems are connected. Service providers who refuse to provide access to its network for government agents will be liable to pay 5% of its annual revenue as penalty. And if the situation still persists, the service provider's license will be revoked altogether. However, opponents of the bill argue that the punitive measure in the bill is too harsh and would affect financial fortunes of network providers in the country. The chief executive of Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, Kweku Sechi-Addo, has said that telecommunication companies were not consulted before the passing of the bill and therefore will review the implications of the bill and communicate it back to the government before it is made into law.
About the communication services tax, and back in 2008 when it was introduced, people referred to it as the talk tax, when it is that you generate a call from anywhere, it's terminated in Ghana, and there is a tax element on the between 17 and 19 cents that is charged. Now, Frank, let me start with you. From 2008 to date, it looks like the Ghanaian is quite silent on that. But recently, when the amendment was introduced, everybody went back, well, then we're going to pay more for our phone calls. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I think it's a standard thing that's happening around the world. Be that as it may, I heard in the report that Kweku Sechi-Addo, who is the CEO of the Chamber of Telecommunications, indicating the fact that they were not consulted. I think I'm very worried about that. I think the world is changing. There's more engagement that's required, particularly with stakeholders, to agree on certain things so that we don't always get this kind of brouhaha when legislations are being passed. But the truth of the matter is, I think as a country, we all want development. We want good roads, we want good hospitals, we want good water system, energy. There are only two ways of doing it: either borrow to do it or raise taxes.
Right.
And then again, manage efficiently the tax you've already, taken from the public.
Right.
And so for me, the issue is not really about the tax. It was passed in 2008, like you referred to.
Right.
But the mechanisms in monitoring what has been accrued to the state as a result of taxation was not there. This bill seeks to clarify that and make it a more, make it more effective to mobilize funds. There's a lot to do, but I'm worried about the lack of engagement with stakeholders to, fine-tune the legislation to make it acceptable to all.
Right. Well, John, let me come to you. Lack of engagement, he's mentioned. Government needs to raise revenue. That is very pertinent. This bill was passed under a certificate of urgency. Does it give the indication that, well, we need to raise some extra monies here and there, or the proper interpretation of the excise nature of the law is what we are looking at here?
Well, first, let me repost what Frank said. I'm not sure the government was under any obligation to consult the Chamber of Telecommunications. Okay, the government, as you rightly pointed out, needs to raise revenue for development. Okay, so it has to decide where it can get the quickest, the fastest, the easiest revenue. And the telecom sector, is one good sector where the government can raise the revenue that it requires. I mean, look, telecom, mobile penetration in Ghana today exceeds the population of the country. Yeah. It starts at 100.41%.
Well,
okay,
many a person will have two or more.
Yeah, but then it's quite excessive. So that is where, and people make calls. I mean, we make calls every day.
But the argument would be that when the communication services tax was introduced in 2008, we're being taxed already.
Well, this is a different tax. I mean, this tax is the interconnectivity. Connectivity. It's another tax. So, where I agree with the telecom, chamber, right, is that they are going to suffer from double taxation. And again, but of course, I mean, every businessman, every corporate entity looks at the bottom line. So any measure that the government takes, right, which has an effect on the bottom line, they are about to kick against. And again, let me go back. Look, when I remember when the government imposed windfall tax on the mining companies in Ghana, was it a year or two ago, right? I mean, I'm not sure they consulted the chambers of commerce. Look, the government of Zambia imposed a similar windfall tax on the mining companies about 3, 4, 5 years ago. Okay, they did not consult the mining companies. It is within their remit, their rights, if you like, to impose taxes as they deem fit.
Right, Peter. Timing, the tax nature of it. This is an interconnectivity thing, kind of different from what perception people have. What do you make of it?
You see, this is very interesting. You see, whenever a government decides to increase a tax in a country, there must be a clear definition of what that tax is going to be used for.
Right.
Now, as you're saying, interconnectivity tax, this tax was there. Why this sense of urgency that they have just introduced in trying to raise this tax? When this particular tax was introduced back in 2007, 2008, there was a clear definition of what the money was going to be used for. And indeed, that was the money that was used to introduce a program called National Youth Employment, which the country, Ghana, earns over 350 million dollars in a year, in equivalent of the country's money. Now, this agency that we are placing on this tax, which is being introduced today, calling it interconnectivity tax or whatever it is still going to trickle down on the people. It's going to go down onto the people.
You suspect that the telecommunication providers will pass it down to the
users? It is not something that they will just consume it. They will definitely pass it on. And whoever is in the country and is subscribing to any of these networks are going to end up paying for it. So the thing is, if you're taxing the people and the people are not seeing what you're using the money for, that is a trouble. let me tell you what, this agency that you're placing on introducing this tax is nothing else than the fact that there is a very serious fundamental problem in the country today. The economy of Ghana is on its knees. In fact, everything in the country is almost at standstill. Nothing is working in the country. So the government itself is in hot waters. They don't want
if you say so, that nothing is working, something must be done to get the wheel of the economy, the nation going.
The people,
and this is a measure that can help.
Look, the thing is, the people are already crying. They're in hardship. Everybody in the country is crying. And you're still going to tax them the more for them to go into deeper trouble. And that's a very serious matter. The government, for the past 5 years, as they've been in power, let's ask ourselves, have they been able to introduce any policy that will generate any income for the people in the country? No. So they have turned around, going back to the people in the country to take their money.
Frank alluded to the fact that we needed to clarify the excise nature of it and the revenues that accrue in there to be paid properly to the right place. Is it not tidying up the system? Is it not a policy direction kind of?
You know, I think we're growing as a country. We always say we're having a lot of middle income earners in Ghana today, middle class,
right.
And so sometimes we need to relegate this politics to the background. I think that in this country, when every month I get a mobile bill, there's a tax component in it. I get in my internet usage, house phone, there's a tax component in it. The reason why you and I in Britain enjoying the leisures of Britain is the tax system. You have to pay tax. If you want good roads, good hospital, NHS, you have to pay tax. I think the same should be said for Ghana. 6% for me is paltry. 6%.
In addition to what you're already paying.
It's still paltry.
Why should it be?
But my brother, Africa is behind. And we're saying that mobile phone penetration is even more in Africa than in the West. Over 500 million, the last figures. And if there's an opportunity to raise revenue there, I am up for it. I'll be glad to pay even 12%. But the point has to be made that, you see, we all want things to be done in a certain way. The only way to do it is either debt finance or raise taxes, or a combination of both. The law existed, but the monetary mechanism wasn't there. The revenue accruable to the state was not coming. Right. So there was a need for clarity. And the telcos were using the, the confusion in the law to exploit the states. Now a decision has to be taken to make it clearer to everybody, so that if you don't pay those taxes, if you don't allow access to your data, there are consequences for it. And obviously, if you're a telco, you don't have any issues with the minister or the regulators having access to the data, you shouldn't be worried about the consequences of not doing so.
Then let me come to you, John. Maybe you can help me on this one. If it is that we need to identify where we need to raise the revenue, people are using the service. Already there is a service tax on there already. It makes, at least those of us outside of Ghana, our calls that we make to Ghana makes it a bit more expensive than when it is you compare to other countries in the sub-region. Is it not just an easy way of government trying to raise money rather than getting into proper structured policy to raise money from elsewhere?
Let me give you an answer with an analogy. When we travel on the underground in London, from I think 7 a.m. to 9:30.
Yeah, that's the peak time.
You pay more. You pay more. Then the off-peak time between 9 and 5, the fares are less. Why do you pay more? Do you pay more? Because a lot of people use the underground or the bus or the buses between 7 and 9 a.m. Right? So you pay more. And I said before, like I said before, the the mobile penetration is over 100%, right? And the demand for telecom services in Ghana is almost inelastic. It's almost inelastic, okay? So that when the taxes are imposed, right, 6% or maybe 12% in total, or 90% in total, it's not going to deter, right, any Kwejo or Ajua or Kwesi for making their phone calls. They'll make it.
Yeah. So
the government determined that, look, this is a very good source of revenue, right, where nobody can dodge it. that tax.
Right.
Okay, so let's impose these taxes on this sector, right, and raise the necessary money that we need, to implement, the programs that we want to implement. It's as simple as that. So if like my friend here said, they shouldn't do that. Would you rather the government went outside? Already we have a high debt burden. The incidence of debt burden is quite high. Would you rather the government went outside, though rather they're going to launch a new Eurobond, I think $1 billion Eurobond. Would you rather they went away outside to borrow more money to increase their debt burden, or what?
Well, the argument ensued in Parliament, and various amendment propositions were made, and we had what was passed a couple of days back. We're taking a short break, and when we come back, we'll look at the kind of arguments that were put up and the reactions and the subsequent passing of the bill. Focus on Ghana returns in a moment.